Welcome to the Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. I've got an old friend with me today. Now, would you like to tell people who you are and kind of what you do?
Hey, Sean, and hey, everybody. So happy to be here and connect with an old friend. My name is Mary Huang, and I spent many, many years as a life coach, a transformational coach, empowerment coach. And when I found myself leaving $1 million life that I helped to co-create with my two young daughters and found ourselves starting over on food stamps, with a very expensive New York University education, I really had to sit down and ask myself, what the bleep happened to you? So I worked really hard to get educated about finance so that my kids wouldn't have to go through what I did. And naturally, the way that I am, whenever I walk through a fire of any type, I always sift for the gold as fast as I can. And not necessarily as fast as I can, but as efficiently and thoroughly as possible, so that I can then share it to others to help them shorten that time span and collapse the time frame so they don't have to. First of all, if they can avoid that pitfall, awesome. But if I can arm them with information to shorten that time frame, that's even better. Yeah. And then especially for generations to come.
Right. It's when you walk through that fire, when you've been in it, people don't get it until they get there. I remember when we were in San Diego, and I got a insurance settlement from something that happened with my family, and I remember my mom saying, "Set that aside, do this and that," and I was just like, "Woohoo!" And most of it went into my education. And yet then it was gone. Looking back, I think about if I could have done things differently. And it was, then years later, I was struggling massively. And I looked at that going, where did I go wrong? I would love to write a finance book someday. And I don't know what it's going to be about because I'm still learning. But I already have the title. And I think that like so many of the finance books are I'm going to teach you to be rich. I'm going to do this. And I love the book. I had to unbleep your finances, un-F your finances. Because me, I'm just like, it's so happy. It's so good. And you feel like all of these experts make it seem like you're going to be okay. I don't feel like it's okay when I'm in the middle of a lake and the boat's on fire,
Right.
Doesn't seem like it's going to be okay. But there are people that can help us feel safe in that chaos. So you're kind of speaking my language here.
It's not only about being safe, but that is the first place to start, right? Because we inherit so much. Yes, I am licensed. I am in the financial industry now. However, that background in psychology and life coaching and spirituality, it's all woven together. And sometimes we have to start with the fear mentality of what we inherited or experienced, the traumas around money, being able to get through that. Sometimes people don't even realize that there's stuff to look at in their subconscious mind to liberate them to be open to take the next best step forward. To even, oh, I'm not good with numbers. I'm afraid of numbers. People are afraid of money. And dispelling that, like unbleeping your money, really comes down to also, I would love to see that book. We should collaborate, right? We've walked through the fire, and having come through the other end, I always see it as a responsibility to pass the knowledge onward.
Right. That's one of my book ideas. I'm actually about 50 pages deep in a different book, How to Not Be an A-hole. But like, it's a whole book about how to just be a nice person and not be an absolute jerk. And the book is entirely irreverent and the entire time. And I'm thoroughly happy about that. But, and I think that like we are talking the same language here. Like you got to go through that fire sometimes. When you've been through that fire, you get this clarity. But I remember once when I saw a video that was put out by like the fire department about what to do when you had a kitchen fire. And there was this person, and they were having a grease fire. The person was cooking, and the oil in the pan caught fire. And the people were like, oh, fire. Let's throw water on it.
Yeah.
Except when you throw water on a fire that's a grease fire, that water instantly boils with that oil, and it creates a big fireball. And sometimes some of our gut reactions when we're in the fire are not the right reactions. And we start freaking out. And sometimes that's where I've been really fascinated. When I started creating this podcast, I was trying to figure out, well, who do I talk to? What are the people I talk to? And I've been trying to reach out to financial advisors, not the people that are talking to, investment for people who are hedge fund managers, because that's not where I'm at right now. Maybe someday, but right now where I'm at is trying to figure out, ooh, kitchen fire, yay, and there's a lot of people that are there. And one of the things that I see is that people are scared to talk, that they don't know how to handle a fire. Like, oh yeah, I know how to handle a fire. There was a video yesterday, this morning, that I watched of a parent. Little girl came into the house and she had a snake. She's like, I have a snake in my jacket. It was interesting because the mom did the worst. The comments were just going after the mom. And the mom's like, well, get it out. First of all, okay, kids got a snake in their jacket. Step one, you take off the jacket. Step number 2, we take the jacket outside because, we don't know what type of snake this is. Step number 3, you get a stick or something and you just carefully get the snake out. What did the mom do? Mom said, oh, you got a snake in your jacket? Get it out. Reach inside. So the kid's reaching in with a gloved hand, trying to pull out the snake. And then the mom says this, take off your glove. And everyone's like, no, don't tell the kid to take off her gloves. What if it's a rattlesnake or something? Luckily, the kid then reached in, pulled out, it was like a little garter snake, which it can't do anything. But in that moment, I'm not judging that mom. She jumped into the fire and she didn't know what to do. And she literally froze up and started making the wrong decisions. And so that just kind of popped to mind as you were talking about this. Going through the fire, sometimes the fire is a place that we kind of lose our heads to.
That's a really good point. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons, no matter what kind of fire we're walking through, to have someone who's either walked through it, who can intelligently guide someone who's going through it, right? At least a few steps ahead, or even better, a professional, depending on what topic we're talking about, so that you can have trusted guidance to get out of the fire without losing your head or freezing and not taking action. Like, so many different ways that could have played out and been worse. What a good story and a good analogy. I think that fear can really stop people from thinking clearly and taking the appropriate action.
You were in your fire. You were deep in this fire. You had stepped out of this partnership, and then you were dealing with fire with your daughters. Where did you go? What did you do to find your way?
I don't know if everybody can relate with this, but the truth is I got saved by God, by Jesus, and my faith,
That's awesome.
in 100% relying on my Creator for every provision, for every need. People ask me all the time, how did you do it? You had no money. How did you do it? I'm like, honestly, I don't know. And it took time for me to look back, to connect the dots. We were saying this off air earlier about the quote from Steve Jobs and how, like, you can't connect the dots sometimes until you look backwards. And so people would ask me as I was walking through, and I'm like, I don't know. It's just survival mode. When you become a single mom, having to like survive and figure out how to get food and stuff, first I was relying on government support. And then pretty much that was the main thing. And then putting my blinders on and saying, what kind of value can I offer the marketplace that people would pay money for? So luckily I had my life coaching business that I could lean on. But that's still, having your own business takes a lot more work than going and getting a 9 to 5. And there's no right or wrong. It's just
Yeah.
what your goals are and what you're aiming for, what you're built for. So I didn't get a 9 to 5. I was just kind of like relying, number one, on my creator. And through that journey, what I discovered was I was being unschooled by my creator of all the belief systems that I had around money. Everything was just
Yes.
crashed down to the ground into the atomic level. Like it was rubble. I
Yes.
was rubble.
Yes.
I didn't want to live anymore, but I had to because I had two little ones looking at me. And I'm like, I'm the one in my bloodline, in my generation, to break the chains of poverty consciousness, even though my dad and my mom were immigrants from Taiwan and they worked so hard to get to a very high level in business and success materially, but we were still carrying this. I know I was carrying a spiritual bankruptcy internally because we were abandoned in wealth and opulence, but we had no love and no parental figures around, no guardians, no adults. It was just me and my brother, just like figuring our way out through life as, young people with money, but no love. And so that's a different type of poverty, but it's still the spirit of poverty. And
Yeah.
so, I feel so honored to go through these fires because I get to be the one in my lineage to be conscious about what is this all about on a spiritual plane, because everything happens in the spiritual before it materializes in the physical. And so
Yeah.
physical, we are talking about money, but money, when we really enter the spiritual levels higher and higher, we actually realize, looking back, that money is the lowest part of wealth from a spiritual perspective. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with being wealthy. In fact, my goal is to be as wealthy as possible so that I can continue to bless so many people. I really want to just like flow money to people and pay off their debts so that they become so open to me speaking to them about who my God is, what my God
Yeah.
has done for me, and just testify for the rest of my life because it's just so
You
powerful.
know, one of the interesting things that you're bringing up is like this has been the last two people I interviewed. Both of them said that there was a very fundamental part of their faith was tied to their finances. The last two people that I interviewed talked about that, and it's really interesting because I grew up with a mentality that was very much uh, money is evil. You can't serve God and money, and that there was this split. And then the last two people I talked about were talking about, you know what? If you have nothing, then you can't help anyone. You know, like this is the reality out there. You see people that are begging for themselves. How can you turn and hand something to the person next to you? And if you do not have surplus, if you do not have abundance, if you do not have these things, then you're going to be the one trying to get help, and then you're not doing anyone any good at that point. And I love that you talk about this mentality shift though as well, because I have this quote on my wall, Jeremiah 29:11, that my dad gave
Mm.
me. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. And it says, the idea of that verse was always like, God has this abundance waiting for us. God has this better future waiting for us. But you have to be ready and willing to step through the door. It's interesting, too. I was talking to my daughter, and we were talking about mindsets. We've been playing Minecraft lately as our little father-daughter bonding activity, and we're not playing the survival game. We just build. We go in there, we place, and we build houses because she's a little artist at heart. All these paintings on the wall are all hers, and she loves to create and design. And one of the things that we did is I said, hey, let's play a new map. And she's like, I'm scared to play a new map. I like the map that we've been playing. I said, you know what? Let's try it out. I'm scared too. And we jumped into this new map and we got in there and we were blown away by how fun it was. But we often will limit ourselves so dramatically, with these old mindsets, with these old views of the world, of reality. And we don't realize how much we're being held back until we can step out of that place. And so I love this mindset shift that you're referencing. It's beautiful.
I love the story you just told because it is absolutely 100% true. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And if we don't know
Yep.
that we're limited within a certain map and that there's actually, you can zoom out and chunk up and there's a way bigger map, or you can just do a whole new map, we don't
Right?
even realize because we don't know what we don't know. And if
Hmm.
we might want to just foil up and crumple up the old map because it just doesn't serve, but even more so, maybe sift out the golden nuggets from it, what not to do and what to do. For instance, I learned from my pains of being abandoned in wealth that, okay, well, like I looked at it, I healed the things, I took the things that were great, and then I healed the parts that were not, that were hurtful and
Yeah.
harmful. And then now, as a mom, I get to bring our lineage to the next level. And so I think it starts with that level of awareness you're talking about, and then helping your child understand it from such a young age. That
Yes.
Minecraft game, you're laying that foundation of thought process of how to look at life from a game. And that's how we as adults can look at life as well. Because why do we should go back to having that childlike innocence of how we look at life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think too, like the innocence is so important, and like our kids are growing up in a world that has so much information, like my daughter knows things, knows words, knows topics that I didn't learn till much later in life. It's just there, but yet at the same time, um, we are still tasked with guiding them. And this is kind of where this podcast comes in, because you had this one talking point. What are the core building blocks of a healthy financial portfolio? And one of the things when I read that, and I was sitting there having a conversation with a student of mine, and he was describing something. He's like, you know what, I want to invest in shipping. I was like, well, that's interesting. Sounds pretty cool, man. But then I listed out to him some principles that I had guests share with me. And he was like, nah, when I go in, I want to go big and everything. And I was like, you're a roulette player. Let's play, red number 20 or something. It's like, I said, you're all in on one thing. And I said, that's not always good. But then at the same time, I was like, but I don't know. I don't know what's good, and so these questions are questions that I've been asking myself. I know when things are seemingly not good. I know that something that, when you have all of your eggs in one basket, I kind of understand that that's not good, but I'm still learning these concepts. And that's where I'm proud of myself. Last year I did my MBA. And the part of that was to get more information about business, to
Yeah.
learn more about this stuff so that I can better prepare and be a better steward and better teacher for my daughter, you know? But I still don't have an answer to what are these principles? What are the core building blocks? And so, yeah. How are you educating the people that come to you about that?
Well, I whip out my whiteboard on my iPad and I take them through a little bit of just education of how we view money and preparing for retirement. As a retirement consultant, we talk about legacy and wealth, but there are building blocks. We want to start with a strong foundation. So it's about protection first. As a society, especially as Americans, but a lot of people look to America as the lead on how to think about things. And so America is all about fame and money and stardom and making it big. And the thing is, the ones who actually make it, they're not trying to be all flashy about it. And behind the scenes, it took a lot of years of building a strong foundation, having the skill set, having the
Yeah.
support system, having a mentor, having like the right foundational principles to get there. We can't just even I fell prey to that because we don't know better if we, again, unconscious incompetence, if we're just looking at the result of what someone worked so hard to get to, but not understand what it is to what is the blueprint? What are the
Yeah.
actual correct steps to get there? What are the pitfalls? What are the pitfalls that are okay to go through, because then we'll learn the valuable lessons of what not to do and then teach it forward. What did they gain from their forefathers that taught them? Do you know what I mean? There's so
Yeah.
much. I tried to go after the results because we are seeing that on social media, on the news,
Yes.
all around us. We're being rewarded for going after putting out more content or whatever, right? The likes and the this and the that. But the truth is, we end up spinning our wheels and feeling empty and not getting the results because we don't actually understand the core principles and the fundamentals of how someone got to where they got to. And so when it comes to
There was
oh, go ahead. Yeah,
no,
go
no,
ahead.
no. You ever see these videos? I love these videos of these reaction videos at the gym, and these people go into the gym, not the ones that are shaming people, but a guy will go in and look around, and it's just people working out on the machines in really weird ways. You know, someone who's like hanging upside down from the pull down bar and like just completely doing the motions wrong. And everyone's like, ah, ha, 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 laughing at them. But at the same time, bravo for going to the gym. Bravo for showing up and saying, you know what, I want to be here looking better. But so often, you don't know what are the motions. You don't know what are the correct movements to get over. Or maybe you're just like, I'm going to work legs every day. And so you get these really strong legs, and then you do anything with your upper body and you have no upper body. Or you get people that you see very common in the gym, people that work out their upper body and then they don't do leg day, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing. Like, it's an interesting analogy because we don't have a forum for working out things financially. We have the gym for fitness. We have sports for that as well. We have other areas for dating, for social nights, for whatever. But we just don't have forums for talking about or practicing money. It's you go to your grade school, you're in college, and then suddenly it's like, welcome to life. And go do this stuff that you've never been trained. And
So
so
true.
that's just what made me, when you were talking, that's what popped up.
Well, the gym analogy is amazing because that makes me think, what if we had a standard practice where everyone who comes through the door and signs up for a membership is required to learn how to use each machine correctly? It's good for the gym because they're not going to be as liable for injuries. It's good. Like, you want your people,
And they're going to come
like,
back.
they're going to come back. They're going to get results. They're going to keep going. Like, it's just a win-win-win. And so when I think about what you're bringing up, it's so true. We are not taught financial, like personal finance. We're just expected to go through school, go get a job, and follow the footsteps of whatever our parents did. And HR is so often the department that teaches people how to invest their money, but they're not teaching. They're just giving you like a very narrow few selections of where to put your money. But you're not getting educated, because that's the thing, is like, it's so important for us to learn. And yeah, maybe you can create the forum. Maybe you can create, well, you have the podcast. But I do agree.
Yeah.
I wish that middle school, high school, college, that personal finance is a requirement, because that's part of life. Otherwise, people who don't understand how to protect, earn, and multiply and manage and grow their money, they're very easy to control. Because now the government can come in, the employer can come in, anybody who has figured it out can come in and say, well, I'm going to take advantage of you because you have, labor that I can use. You have the hours, the energy in a body system that I can utilize for my gain. And people are feeling victimized. But how do we flip that around, right? And I think that's what this conversation can really do for people.
One of the things, there was I love Mark Rober. He's got a great YouTube channel, and he does all of these like sciencey things, and he has these fun ones where and people steal things out of cars or out of like packages off of front porches. He'll have these machines that release glitter bombs
Oh,
on your
yes,
car.
yes.
But he did another video where he was going after scammers in India that were calling, and like he did this whole multi-part series on these scam centers that were going after people. But one of the things that they pointed out in the video was that they were going after people that were vulnerable, people who just were like, would believe anything. Like, people were just like, oh, my bank has overdrawn $10,000 and I need to write you go get you cash and put cash in a box. And people were doing that, you know,
Wow.
it
Wow.
like they got an official sounding call and the people were like, oh yeah, $10,000. Yes, let me go withdraw that. I'm so sorry. And they were apologizing to these scammers, and it was
Wow.
absolutely wild. And luckily, Mark Rober was able to help them intercept at least one of these packages before it got there. And the police picked it up. But people were so easily taken advantage of because they didn't have information, like you're saying. Like they didn't know, though. That's not how a bank operates. You're not going to get a phone call and someone telling you to put 10 grand in an envelope, but people didn't know.
Wow. Wow. And that worries me. That worries me that there's a sector of our population on the planet that is so gullible. Hey, I'm not judging because I've had plenty of instances where I had to grow up from too many instances of being gullible and being,
Yeah.
so where does that come from? Is it because we think we have to be nice? Like it's important for us to, as a people, to get educated and not point fingers and blame, but to take radical self responsibility.
Yes.
Being so easily fooled is not okay, and we do have to take responsibility for that.
It's
Been
so
there.
true that you have to. I really enjoy Mel Robbins, and I've actually had the wonderful opportunity to do some to be part of her community for helping out with this one project that they're doing. But Mel Robbins has this one thing that she loves to say: nobody's coming to rescue you. And that to me is so powerful that and I keep telling people, yes, there is someone coming to rescue you. And I'm like, well, who? You are. Because
That's
you can
right.
make the changes. You can do the things that you need to do to change your life. It might not be easy, it might not be fast, but you can do it. You just It takes focus, it takes a belief that you can.
And it takes a why. Your why's got to be so much bigger than you. When you have that why placed in front of you, like in the forefront of your mind all the time. So having kids is like one of the
Yeah.
easiest whys. Like, how did you make it, Mayor? Well, I got two little ones watching me. I got to make it. And I got to
Right?
make it in a way where they're going to duplicate the best that I can figure out, right? I can't just get by and then they're going to
Yeah.
duplicate that. Like, no way, man. My responsibility I take very strongly. And I think maybe, yeah, is having the big why and viewing yourself as the one, like you're
Mm.
saying, and then taking radical responsibility to make it happen. And we can. We were born to do this. We were born to be wealthy, to succeed, and to be the change in our lineage. And when we do that for ourselves, our children, our lineage, we're naturally going to radiate that out into our community and our spheres of influence, and then it just ripples out. Yeah.
I love that. I there was this one video. I'm a sucker for these silly little motivational videos. But there was one that I was like, to be the greatest, what was it? It was a simple little line: to be the absolute, best person ever in your lineage. Like, you should aspire to that. You should aspire to be someone that you can look up to, that you can respect. I was proud of myself the other day that there was a guy weaving through traffic, and he was very dangerous. and I'm riding motorcycle, all these people, and I turned to him and I just shouted at him. And I was like, slow down. You're going to hurt someone. And he turned to me like he was ready to go. And I just gave him the look, man. And I was like, this is not happening today. We are not going there. You're not doing this. And he wanted to come at me. And I was just like, man, we're not going there. This is not us. Be better. And I looked at him and I said, be better. Because you can. And he stopped and he turned and he backed down. And what it reminded me of, we have to step up and take control of our lives. In that moment, there was chaos. There was danger for the people around me. And I had to say, you know what? I can do something. And in my financial life, that danger is there for my daughter. That danger is there for the people around me. And if I don't step up and do something, who will? You know what I mean? If not me, then who? And if that's not good enough motivation, what else do you need? Like, every time I wake up and I see this little face staring at me, and I'm like, I need to fix stuff because I owe it to her. She came in and incarnated in this, form because she trusted me, and I owe it to her.
Yeah. And taking that seriously is having such a beautiful child to be the impetus, the reason, the catalyst, is amazing. And even sitting with people who are single and in their 60s in America, it's very, very expensive to have care when you're old. And the statistics are high. Most, like 70% of people are going to need major care. And if you're single and you have no relatives, no one to take care of you, that's even scarier. So it doesn't matter. So I hate to use fear as a way to move people forward, but we are either moved by moving away from pain and fear, or we're moved by moving towards a vision, a goal, a passion, and pleasure. And so I think both can work in tandem, because it's the truth. If we're just going to be like, oh, like I used to be, my head in the clouds, I'm just all flowery and happy, I am. But then when you crash from there into the fire of figuring out how to survive and then thrive, you learn some things. You learn about sitting around manifesting ain't gonna cut it. Like, you gotta take the strategic steps to bring the results.
You were before, while we were the universe aligns everything perfectly. There was an advertisement that came on before we jumped onto this call, and it said this girl, and she got on, and this video was like, manifesting millions. I will tell you the secret to manifesting millions. And I'm like, I love it. I do love it. And I believe that there is intense power in intention. I believe that if you can open up to opportunity and to things that the universe can bring you, there's stuff there. But that's part of it. The other part of it is absolute accountability. It's about knowing how to budget. It's about setting aside patterns and just being able to tighten the belt and look at what you need to be putting money into and what you need to not. And I had a guest that came on last week that said a really interesting thing in regards to retirement. She was talking about helping save up for college for your kids. And she's like, you know what? To me, that's a way smaller of a priority. And she's like, it's controversial, but she says, if I don't set up a really good retirement, it is going to be much more detrimental to my children than them trying to figure out how to pay for college. Because she says, if I am not provided for financially in retirement, that is going to be a way, way, way bigger drain on my kids than it will be if they have a small amount of student loan debt. And so I was just like, that kind of blew me away. And I was just like, wow, never thought about it that way. And my mom's getting to the age where she's talking to me about these things. She's like, I'm older and I love my parents, but they didn't make the moves that would have given them a float. And now they are in a place that it's not as good as it could be. And that's tough for me to see. And I'm sitting there looking at my own life going, wow, what changes can I make so I'm not putting that on my daughter?
I really appreciate your candidness and transparency because I think it gives permission to the listener to say, you know what, let me get real about myself, where I
Yeah.
am. Our generation, let's dive into this for a minute because this is serious. I just want to sound the alarm that there is a retirement crisis in America and probably globally. But
Yeah.
I'm here in America, so I can talk about the stats here. I'm in it all day long, and this is what I do. And what I'm seeing is talking to 80-year-olds. Okay, this has happened many times, or even 60-year-olds. But let's talk about 80-year-old people that I'm sitting with, and they have no retirement funds.
Yeah.
None. And they're living solely off of Social Security. Sometimes it's a widow because women live longer. It is heartbreaking because I actually cannot help this person or these people because
Yeah.
in order for me to help them build money, first of all, they're 80. So their time horizon, the length of time left to actually have money to grow is like they're at the end already. They're near the end. They should, and so that's really heartbreaking. Or even 60-year-olds who say, I want to retire in 5 years, but they have no retirement accounts set aside. They don't own anything. And they're still caught in this mindset of manifesting, like, I'm going to retire in 5 years and I want to buy a house. And so, what are the things? How do people know that they can retire? You can retire if your expenses in retirement can be covered by fixed assets or fixed income. Or if you don't have enough in fixed income like Social Security, don't count on Social Security as a solution because humans are managing that. And if they're mismanaging it, even on their website, they said they can promise to pay till the year 2034. Doesn't mean they won't be around after that, but I tell everyone, treat it like icing on the cake. If you get a check from there, right now, the average annual income from Social Security is $22,000 a year. You still have to pay taxes and calculate for inflation. So you even if you have 22,000 a year, like don't count on what is that going to do for you. So just like treat it like a vacation money if you end up getting it, because by the time we come around to the age to receive something like that, it like just don't count on it. So let's rewind for a minute. Like, how did the people, our parents' generation and before, how was retirement for them? What did that look like? What was the blueprint? They worked their whole lives at a company, and then the promise was you were going to receive a pension. And a pension basically says, I'm going to pay you till the day you die, a percentage of your salary. So we call this like a three-legged stool they can count on. How when they retire, retirement means we're no longer working, our body is at rest, and the buckets of money that we've prepared for retirement to give us income while our body is no longer working. That's retirement. We can retire when we have enough buckets of money set up to pay us an income during retirement. We're not taught this in school. We're not taught this by our parents because our parents didn't know. And the system has shifted. It went from a pension. So it's a three-legged stool. Back in the day, it was Social Security, it was pension, and then savings. Now, pension through our grandparents' generation to our parents' generation to our generation. Pension, you will very, very rarely even hear about. Such a small, tiny percentage of the population has something like that. And if they do, it's tiny. Sometimes they've been ripped away and said, sorry, we went bankrupt, so we can't pay you. And then they just they do the type of Chapter 11, I think, where it's bankruptcy, but they can still come back after a certain year. So just like reshuffling, but the people got injured. So we have to, so if pension is no longer there, Social Security can't be counted on. The third leg is savings and your own investing. So we have to be radically responsible for learning how to do that. So in our generation, we saw it turn from pension going away to 401ks. 401k is something that we've all heard of, and HR sets us up with it. If we're in the education system or a nonprofit, it's a different name, a 403b, but they're all the same thing. They operate the same way. And so, I start there because that's like understanding the history of how we got to here in the sense of retirement then focuses the conversation on, well, what do I do now? What do I need
Yeah.
to know about how these things operate? Where is it invested? Can it grow? Can it lose? Yes, it
Yeah.
can. If you don't like risk, what are your options? And so that's the conversation that really needs to be had in the education.
I love that. And I think that the there was a thing that I was reading the other day, and I think one of the things that people forget about, we spend so much time trying to make it, try to get ahead, try to do this and that. I had a friend that I was talking to tonight, and he's like, I'm in my 40s. And, and I thought I was supposed to have all my stuff together. I thought I would have it all together. And now he's like, and now people are looking at me like, why don't you have it together? And there was an article the other day talking about how Generation X is starting to come up on retirement, and it was like, whoa, Gen X is getting ready to retire. Like some of the older part of
Wow.
Gen X is getting ready to retire, and it was just like, it was, you don't think these timelines are coming up on you so fast. You don't realize how fast time is passing. And if you are not starting out, what are you doing? And you're right. Like in my last interview, I was admitting as well. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do in my podcast is I don't want people to think that I'm trying to come across as an expert. I'm playing the idiot, and to a degree I am, because I was sitting there going, what is the difference between a 401k and a Roth IRA? What is it, this and that, and finding these things out. And the first thing that you can do is admit that you don't know, and then get out there and educate yourself, or, what is the limit on how much you can put into your 401k? Is your employer going to match? Some people have matching and they don't even realize that there's extra money on the table that they're not getting. Because if you can put in 20,000 a year into your 401k or something like that, and your employer matches 100%, like, that's an extra $20,000 that you're just not taking from your employer, But some people don't even know that exists, Oh, well, I got to pay my bills right now. And then that's where I think that getting your house in order, because again, if you got high credit card debt, if you are dealing with spending habits that are not conducive to being able to have enough to save, you have to figure out what's going on. Take a snapshot of where you're at right now, because maybe you don't have enough money because you're not making enough. Maybe you need to change jobs. Maybe you are trying to run your own business and the profit margins are not enough. You need to make change. But again, I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, is getting that snapshot of where you're at. I remember one of the best gyms I ever joined was a YMCA. And I'll explain why. Early on, they had a class right at the beginning about how to use the equipment, and they had a computer system that tracked all of your workouts, and the machines were built in to this computer system, and the computer system recommended what you did that day. And I actually got progress. I was moving forwards, because otherwise I'd go see a personal trainer and it was their whim of what I needed that day. And sometimes they were great. Sometimes we did this weird thing that I was like, what are we doing this for? But with the computer, I had such a great roadmap. And I think that that's what you have to find is a person who can give you this clear roadmap forward. And there's some
That is
amazing
such
people out there.
that is such a good point and a great analogy. Getting that snapshot. First of all, tabling the shame
Yeah.
of you're a certain age and you should have had it all together. How could we have done it well if we didn't have proper guidance, right? And our parents, statistically, people would rather get on stage and speak in front of a huge audience, which is like one of the top fears humans have, than to talk about money at the family dinner table.
Yeah.
So polls have showed that people do not want to talk about money even at home, because there's so much shame about how you should know, you should be successful. They're tying their success to how much they're making or how big their portfolio is. And we got to table that. And then just go to someone so they could get a snapshot of where you are. What do you have in place? Maybe you don't have any things in place, but maybe you have a few things. And then starting there. Sometimes we do have to start with a foundational income and expense sheet for ourselves. If we don't have a household and we're solo, start there. That's great, because then once you start to have a partner and children, you've got that stability that you're going to pick the right partner who also has the same value system and got themselves in order. And then you're going to perpetuate that through the generations. So we got to start, no matter what our situation is, start there. Know what's coming in and what's going out, because then we can tweak. If we need to find money, a lot of times, if a client is in that situation, they're like, I can't afford to do X, Y, and Z to set up something for retirement. I'm like, that's more the reason why we got to like sit down and set something for retirement, right?
Yeah.
If you feel like you can't afford it. And so I'm like, do this income and expense sheet and we'll go through it together, because part of my job is to help you find the funds to move it, like redirect your spending to serving yourself. And giving that permission, or even sometimes we get caught up in the hamster wheel. We don't even like come out of that neural pathway of like just trying to hustle and make it. You need someone to just break that, like disrupt your thought process and your day-to-day routine, to just give you another pathway. And so like I really see myself as that, like that person holding the torch and being like, over here, yes you can, I did it, you can too, and lots of people have, and it's your turn. Because if you feel that you can't afford it, that's even more the reason, the biggest why, that you need to really stop, screeching halt everything, and like prioritize this. Because if it's a matter of, I'm not spiritual, I'm not a good person if I'm going to prioritize being wealthy. Or like there's a love-hate. I want to be wealthy because I want to be like what I see on social media, but you have this internal struggle of like, I'm not allowed to do that because I'm a bad person, because wealthy people are greedy and slimy, right? So you got to work that out. But then sitting with a professional who's going to help you create the strategy and implement the financial steps to actually create those results. We got to do it all. And you can, and you have to.
Can I ask you one last question before we finish up?
Absolutely.
If you could go back in time to a younger version of yourself, what financial advice would you give yourself?
The younger we start, it's like a simple formula. It's like time and money compounded is what's going to get us the easiest way to get to that final result. So my children, the sooner we can start our children with something, so that when they're older, they have that thing grown already for them. And in a way that, is efficient, and then tax treatment, that's a different conversation, but it's all interwoven. We have to think about that. But the advice I would give myself early on is go seek out information, get as educated as you can, and implement, take action. Like learning and listening is not enough. We've got to take action, but educated information and action.